Kyle heard the whimpering before he saw her. Deck 9's waste compartment shouldn't have contained anything alive, but there she was. A small alien cub with violet fur, matted in filth, pressed against the far wall. Her enormous eyes tracked him with pure terror. Kyle froze, mop in hand. The station recycled everything. If she'd been here long, she was starving. He pulled a ration bar from his pocket and slid it across the floor. The cub didn't move. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm not gonna hurt you." She stared at the bar, then at him. Her mouth opened, revealing rows of delicate crystalline teeth, and she made a sound like breaking glass. Kyle's translator flickered. "Sir, I cannot eat." Kyle knelt slowly, reading the markings on her shoulder. Valethi script. His blood went cold. The Valethi colonies had been obliterated 8 months ago. The evacuation ships had supposedly saved everyone. Supposedly. "You're alone, aren't you?" The cub's ears flattened. Kyle looked at the ration bar, then back at her. Station protocol demanded he report unauthorized aliens immediately. Violators faced termination and deportation. But protocol hadn't saved her people. Protocol hadn't stopped the bombs. Kyle made his decision in seconds. He removed his maintenance jacket and draped it over her trembling body. "My name's Kyle. I'm getting you out of here." His quarters were barely large enough for one person, but Kyle cleared space in the storage closet and made a nest from his spare blankets. The cub, Zira, she'd managed to communicate, curled into the smallest ball possible. Kyle tried everything in his pantry. Protein paste, dried fruit, synthetic meat. She sniffed each offering and recoiled, that same crystalline sound rattling from her throat. "Sir, I cannot eat." Frustration burned through him. She was dying. He pulled up Valethi biology files on his cracked datapad, scrolling frantically through nutritional requirements. His stomach sank. Valethi cubs needed selenium compounds and heavy metals that would poison most carbon-based species. The compounds weren't illegal, but they weren't sold in civilian markets either. Kyle checked his account balance. 300 credits. 1 month's wages. Rent was due in 2 weeks. He stared at Zira's hollow eyes and knew there was no choice at all. The black market operated in the station's forgotten spaces, places maintenance workers knew well. Kyle found a Ralgathi merchant in a decommissioned cargo bay, surrounded by containers of smuggled goods. "Selenium supplements," Kyle said. "Valethi grade." The merchant's 4 eyes narrowed. "Valethi?" Kyle's jaw tightened. "They're not." The merchant named a price that made Kyle's vision blur. He transferred everything. The merchant handed him 3 small vials. "This'll last maybe a week. You want more? You know where to find me." Kyle clutched the vials and ran. Zira drank the first supplement slowly, her body shuddering with relief. Color returned to her fur. Her eyes brightened. For the first time since he'd found her, she purred, a sound like distant thunder. Kyle sat against the wall, watching her eat, his account balance flashing 0 in his mind. He'd figure something out. He always did. Then his datapad chimed. "Security alert. Unauthorized biological signatures detected in residential block 7. His block. Kyle's heart hammered. They were searching floor by floor. He had maybe an hour. Kyle wrapped Zira in his jacket again and accessed the maintenance network. There were tunnels beneath the residential blocks, service corridors that connected to every section of the station. If he could reach docking bay 12, there was a refugee transport scheduled to depart at 0600. He'd heard rumors of an underground network that moved displaced aliens to sanctuary worlds. It was his only chance. Zira clung to his chest as he descended into the tunnels, her claws digging through his shirt. The station groaned around them, metal and recycled air. Kyle's breath came fast. His badge would track him, but without it, he couldn't open the secured doors. He was leaving a trail straight to himself. Security drones appeared at the first junction, scanners sweeping the darkness. Kyle dove into a side passage, pressing Zira against a wall. The drones hummed past. He counted to 10, then moved. Every step brought him closer to the docking bay and closer to losing everything. His job, his home, his identity. He thought about turning back, but Zira's tiny heartbeat pounded against his ribs, and he kept running. The network contact met him at Junction 47, a tall woman named Amara, with scars across her neck. You the janitor? Kyle nodded. I need her on that transport. Amara looked at Zira, then at Kyle. You know what you're asking? They'll brand you a smuggler. You'll never work on a registered station again. Kyle's voice didn't waver. I know. Amara studied him for a long moment, then handed him a key card. Docking Bay 12, berth 6. Ship leaves in 20 minutes. Security's already locked down the main routes. You'll have to go through the maintenance shaft. She paused. There's something you should know. Veilithy cubs. She's probably one of the last. Her whole species. Gone except for maybe a few dozen scattered across the galaxy. What you're doing matters. Kyle swallowed hard. Then let's make sure she survives. The maintenance shaft was a vertical tunnel lined with emergency rungs. Kyle climbed one-handed, Zira pressed against his chest. His arms screamed. Below, he heard voices. Security teams entering the tunnels. They were closing in fast. He reached the top and kicked open the hatch. Docking Bay 12 sprawled before him, a cavern of ships and cargo containers. Berth 6 sat at the far end. Kyle ran. Alarms shrieked. Security officers poured from the side corridors, weapons drawn. Stop! Put down the alien! Kyle skidded behind a cargo container, chest heaving. Zira looked up at him with those enormous eyes, and he saw trust there. Trust he couldn't betray. The refugee ship's engines were already warming up. Blue light spilling from its thrusters. 50 meters. He could make it. Kyle burst from cover and sprinted. Energy bolts scorched the deck around him. He didn't slow. The ship's ramp began to rise. 20 meters. 10. A bolt grazed his shoulder, and he stumbled but kept moving. He reached the ramp and hurled himself forward, landing hard on the metal. Hands grabbed him, refugees pulling him inside. But security was right behind. An officer appeared at the ramp's edge, weapon aimed at Kyle's head. Surrender the alien, or we fire on this vessel. Kyle rose slowly. Zira still clutched against him. The refugees around him tensed. The ship couldn't take off under fire. It would be destroyed before it cleared the bay. There was only one way to end this. Kyle gently, carefully, set Zira down. She made that crystalline sound, confused. He knelt and looked into her eyes. You're going to be okay. These people will take care of you. He stood and faced the security officer. She stays on the ship. I'll come peacefully. You're charged with smuggling, harboring illegal aliens, and evading arrest. Kyle raised his hands. I know. Let the ship go. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the officer lowered his weapon and gestured. Take him! As security cuffs locked around Kyle's wrists, he watched the ramp close. Through the narrowing gap, he saw Zira's face one last time. Refugees gathering around her with food and blankets. The ship's engines roared. It lifted and shot through the atmospheric barrier into open space. Kyle smiled. He'd lost everything. His job, his home, his freedom. But Zira was safe. That was enough. 3 months later, Kyle sat in a detention cell awaiting trial when his datapad chimed. He'd been allowed minimal communication privileges, mostly messages from a public defender. But this message came from an unregistered source. He opened it carefully. The screen filled with text and images, Veilothy symbols, human script, and dozens of alien languages he didn't recognize. At the center was a picture of Zira, healthy and bright-eyed, surrounded by other Veilothy cubs on a sanctuary world. Beneath the image, a message. Because of you, they found us, the scattered survivors. You gave us hope that humanity remembers mercy. You gave us proof that even one person can change everything. We will not forget Kyle Santos. Neither will the galaxy. The message was signed by representatives from 47 refugee species. Kyle stared at the screen as tears blurred his vision. The guard appeared at his cell. Santos, you've got visitors. A lot of them. Kyle stood and walked to the visitation bay. Through the reinforced glass, he saw them. Aliens of every species. Holding signs in 100 languages, human activists stood among them. News drones hovered, broadcasting to every corner of civilized space. At the front stood Amara, and beside her a holographic projection of Zira. The cub's voice crackled through the translator. "Sir, because you gave everything, we can eat. We can live. Humans taught us that family is not blood, it is choice." The galaxy was watching, and Kyle understood that what he'd done in darkness had become a light impossible to extinguish. He'd lost everything, but he'd given Zira and countless others a future. That was what humans did.